This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Welcome back to Threshold. This is Johnny Blue Star. Today I'm very happy to present Rod Tyler as our guest host. Rod joins us because of his profound interest in this kind of topic that we're going to explore today in Threshold, and the quality of his investigations into spirituality, global, environmental, and political issues, and, if I may add, his sense of humor. Hi, Rod.
Good morning to everyone. It's great to be here.
Today, our program, Threshold, postulates that true understanding comes from a deep and profound connection within ourselves to the source of all things, the creative, intelligent, and profoundly righteous creative power behind all manifestation. Today, we are profoundly grateful to have a medical doctor whose life is a testimony to the possibility of putting spiritual principles foremost in his mind as he tried to find out the foundation of disease and its treatment. We're happy to introduce you to Hugo Rodier, MD. Welcome to Threshold, Doctor.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you were convinced many years ago in the importance of nutrition in curing disease, much before most people in the medical profession really caught on. What were those days like? And what convinced you to make such a controversial and neglected journey towards understanding and practicing a medical platform largely focused on food and nutrition instead of pharmaceuticals?
Well, great question. It turns out since I was a child, I felt called to spiritual things. I was quite moved by churches. Of course, at the time I was a Catholic boy, and so I thought that I was going to be a priest as a child. I was educated in a Jesuit school, which are quite given to the mysteries, as you know.
Yes.
And so I was tacking along thinking I'm going to be a priest and love God and his creations and all that. But then my hormones hit the fan and kicked in, and I just couldn't do it. So I didn't pursue that path anymore, but I retained my curiosity about the spiritual realm. And, you know, if you do that, you begin to sense, you begin to be guided as to where you need to go. I just put myself in the hands of the supreme architect, as you put it, and slowly I began to be led to medicine. I felt at the time in high school and college that a good doctor would be a Renaissance man, a woman, a person well-rounded in all the affairs of life, all the transactions of life, especially the spiritual realm, and then throw in a little science, and there you go, you got the best doctor. So I applied to medical school, having gone through biology, psychology background in college. And, of course, you can imagine what happened then. I was greatly disappointed that doctors at the time, 1980, still today, I should say, were trained to be technicians, nothing more than vending machines to produce pharmaceuticals to treat symptoms, and not addressing the root issues of the problems at all, which, of course, it's obvious to everyone now that the roots of diseases are cellular because of imbalances in nutrition, environment, and relationships. So I figured, I'll just jump through these hoops, get my MD degree, then I'll have a platform from which to do what needs to be done. and I began to study nutrition on my own and environmental issues on my own. It wasn't easy, which is the main point of your question, because it wasn't easy being green back then, like Kermit the Frog or the Hulk, you know.
Right.
Not easy. I was thought to be some burnt-out hippie talking about environmental issues and nutritional issues, even though back then I could find all those things very well documented in good medical journals, and I began to see that those articles were being suppressed, ignored, and so, but they were there because having been trained scientifically and rationally, I didn't want to open my mouth unless I found good evidence in the journals. In fact, in medical school, I made it a habit to study from journals, not textbooks. And so I was pretty cutting edge at the time in the early 80s, quoting references from the best of journals that we should address nutritional, environmental, and spiritual issues to heal people. And of course, as you said in the body of your question, everybody's caught on by now. It's everywhere, what I've been talking about. So there's been a transition. Some people would call me a quack back then. Now I'm being asked to speak all over the country and the world and write books. And it's not me. Like I said at the beginning, I feel that I've been guided. I place myself in the hands of the Supreme Architect. And to wrap it up, I think the best way for your audience to understand what the medicine that needs to be practiced is Hermetic Health. And that's the title of my 5th book, which will come out next year.
You know, I'd like to read you from another book, and I don't know if you'll recognize the author, but I thought this book is really appropriate to the advances we're experiencing today. Tell me if you recognize it. Earlier myths and legends have survived to be told in our modern days, uniformly depict the whole universe as made of the same material, ether, which was they called it then. Despite different languages and cultures, we may now interpret their intuitive insights to mean that our whole universe is nothing but energy and information, from now on denoted as E and I. Even the most ancient of philosophies and religions seem to agree spiritual realms were and still are seen as all-encompassing. The material world is nothing but a coarser fabric that is born from the unseen world of spirits. The Hermetic concept of as above, so is below, made no distinction between different disciplines when societies were young. Ancients felt that everything, including themselves and their deities, were an integral part of the fabric of reality. They believed they were one with the whole spectrum of nature. As such, their world was intensely spiritual and physical at the same time. As such, but gradually, these profound insights for economic, political, and religious reasons went underground, lost but to the most esoteric and mystical segments of practically all societies on Earth. And here are the really important things. It was not long before the falling away from a world where people lived with the gods was complete. Humanity slowly descended into a world where physical sciences are divorced from spirituality or that which is not seen. Medieval thinking retained some vestiges of this primordial union between the physical and the spiritual, only to have such unscientific ideas ridiculed by Renaissance scientists. How ironic that a second Renaissance of sorts is dawning upon us now. We are discovering the unity of all things. Overcorrection from Middle Ages spiritualism towards heartless science is being questioned by those who are open to spiritual and emotional enlightenment without abandoning their training in science. They are increasingly discovering new insights into the universe and everything therein. Do you recognize those words?
Well, whoever wrote them, I think they know what's going on. I think I wrote that.
So the audience is somewhat enlightened. This is from a book that, despite the grandiosity of the vision, is actually called Gut Health. and it's about health, bringing the whole spectrum of of an understanding of the nature of things to this terrible problem that America is facing today.
Well,
Good health.
thank you. I got to tell you, those words, I don't think they're mine. I wrote them, but like I said, we're all one big, gigantic consciousness, and it doesn't matter what we call it. And I just feel that our egos get in the way, and I've tried to be conscious of that. I can't say I succeed, but just a little awareness is enough to feel that those words are not mine.
Well, when Leonard Cohen, the singer, songwriter, accepted an award from the Prince of Asturias in Spain, that's what he said. He said, I'm glad to accept these words, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm kind of a custodian of them because they're not coming from some low place within myself, my ego, even my conscious awareness. They're coming from something higher, something that knows much more than my conscious mind does, because I'm a poet. But I think that goes for philosophers and for scientists and for everyone else who gets in touch with that other realm.
Absolutely. I wrote a fiction book, The Fence, in one night, trying to publish that book. And I tell you, it was like I was possessed. I just sat and wrote, and I think it's very humbling to be part of this. And you lose so much by taking credit, so I think you know what I mean.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, right now, I'm going to play a short clip of a song that I and Edgar Ahrens, who's a Russian composer, wrote, and it's sung by Patricia Welch. And it's sort of about, it's something that definitely the lyrics to this song, for me, came from a higher place. But if we could, we're going to take a little break and hear the song and a few ads and get right back on track.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of the stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy. We ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you are facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070. Before getting into some of the critical issues of health that so many of our audience are interested in, I think it's important that you begin by explaining some of the fundamentals of your research that we indicated a little bit in our reading in the last segment. I love the health lesson that's available at your website, where you talk about some fundamental concepts that inform metabolic disorders and their cure. But also, as in the discussion we had before, touch on the nature of life in the universe. So perhaps, Doctor, you could explain briefly about the physics that lie as a critical substratum beneath the biology of cells, and why an understanding of this physics can impact so heavily on treating metabolic disorders.
Sure. Let me start from the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. As above, so below. So the ancients understood this, and they called it Hermetism. And keep in mind that Hermes, or Thoth, is carrying the caduceus, the symbol of the medical profession, is the very essence of what I'm going to say. So picture in your mind the caduceus, two serpents around a central staff, a winged staff. And so the ancients symbolized very important physics, corroborated physics, modern physics, saying the same thing with the caduceus. And so even the Torah and the Kabbalah will tell you the same things. Of course, these are ancient Hindu ideas. But the core of the matter is that God uttered two words, God being one, uttered two words, which became three. And this is highly geometric. But in essence, light being energy and information, those two words formed everything. And this is why the ancients revered nature, the cycles of nature, creation, destruction, spring, summer, fall, winter. Their crops, their very lives depended upon an understanding of very, very basic physics of reality. And so they began to see that the sun coming and going, resurrecting and coming and going, was the very life, that the very essence of their lives. So people get all mixed up and begin to worship these symbols instead of the Supreme Architect or that consciousness behind all these issues. And so it turns out that energy and information formed everything, and I mean the energy and information of the sun. Light is energy and information, including solar energy. Their crops, our plants, harness all that energy and information to where eating food becomes a sacred ritual of incorporated parts of that consciousness or energy and information into our own selves. Our 50 trillion cells cannot work properly nor be constructed properly unless we're getting the right energy and information from the sun, from the plants we eat. And this also this also applies to the energy and information that enlightens our understanding, our thinking, our souls. It's the same. It's all one big soup. And so I'm talking about the same thing. Think of oatmeal. It's all one big bowl of oatmeal, but it might be lumpy. And so for one lump of oatmeal to say to another, well, we're different, it's madness, as you can imagine. And so as our 50 trillion cells get the proper energy and information from food, they can now be fueled properly and do whatever it is they're assigned to do. So a lung cell, a heart cell, a brain cell, they all work the same. Well, they have different functions, but to work, they need the same fuel, the same energy and information. And moderns are now calling all this metabolism. Cells must have the right energy and information to metabolize, to work, just like a combustion engine. The same principles of thermodynamics apply as above, so below, to engines and societies and cities and body cells. And so disease becomes improper fueling, improper energy and information. Of course, the main thing is bad food, but you can throw in there too toxins in the environment, toxic relationships. Now, for disclosure, I must tell you, I'm a Mason. Okay, Masons say the same thing, but as you probably know, Masonry, it's just a search for the common denominator, that perennial philosophy from which all philosophies have sprung. Masons call it strength and wisdom. The pillars of the Kabbalah are strength and wisdom. It's the same as energy and information. And in the center of the Kabbalistic tree, there's a third pillar, balance. It turns out that it's the same with the Kedushas. One snake is strength, the other one is wisdom. One is energy, the other information. And the staff in the middle is balance. Another word for balance is homeostasis. And guess what homeostasis is? Health. Health. And so, all the principles that the fabric of reality, everything that makes the universe, is health, balance. And so, when you start to think that way, eating, relationships, our relationships with others and the environment, the food we eat, are sacred as the same as any church. They're sacred and spiritual the same as any tenet of philosophy you might discuss, salvation, nirvana. And so I'm afraid that our society has not understood all these things. And so processing of food riddled with toxins and preservatives, environments that are causing a lot of diseases, relationships where corporations or other entities take advantage of the public are really immoral in a sense. They're toxic. And I'm afraid that health problems we have, in our bodies cannot be truly understood until we see that they're a reflection of a much bigger imbalance, an imbalance of thinking in our societies where forces such as feminine forces are misunderstood and even attacked and repressed. And that's another way of looking at strength and wisdom, male and female.
Well, Doctor, you were talking about the tree of life, which I think is like the Kabbalistic master paradigm of, or symbolic paradigm of balance, right? Within oneself, as well as
exactly,
as well as in the divine presence, the presence of God itself or Himself, whatever. which is called the Shekinah in Hebrew. And I think this is very much consonant with the teachings of Jesus when he talks in the Lord's Prayer of as above, so below.
Exactly.
He says, on earth as it is in heaven. And as above, so below comes from, I believe, the emerald tablets of Hermes Trismegistus back who knows when, but it's replicated in and hidden somehow in the teachings that we have right at our disposal, right there, but we misinterpret them.
Exactly. Hermes got around quite a bit. He's known as Thoth in Egypt, Dionysius in Greece, Hermes in Dionysius in Italy, Hermes in Greece. He's also called Agni in India. He's called Quetzalcoatl in the Americas. So it's highly symbolic, that figure. The ancients spoke in symbols, and the problem is that take the examples you brought up. Of course, I totally agree. The teachings of Jesus are hermetic. He was a disciple of the Essenes, of John the Baptist, who was deeply hermetic. But he had to talk in symbols too, because if you go out and say these things too loud, you get stoned to death. That's a history of hermetic thinkers, quite persecuted. In fact, the First Crusade, which has been totally erased from history, was not against Palestine or Islam. It was against the Cathars. Was against the Cathars in Benicia, in France.
It was a tremendous slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people, I believe. And at the same time, when the Pope at that time was asked, what should we do? Some of these people will be innocent, and he said, well, that's life. We've got to move forward, and we've got to take care of this heresy. So he did in his own way, and thereby destroyed a very important component of early Christianity. We have to take a break now. We'll be right back and dig much more deeply, not only into the etheric aspect of the cosmos, but right down to the gut. I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you're in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God! Are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born.
New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to JohnnyBlueStar.com and let me know. That's JohnnyBlueStar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too. Hi, it's Johnny Bluestar coming back to you with Threshold. We're speaking with Dr. Hugo Rodier, who has written this great book called Gut Health, Lighting the Path to Well-Being. And we have, in our first segment, we've really gone sky high and discussed the entire universe. It's and the existence of a sort of sense of cosmic balance there that we need to bring down to this level. And so to get really down to this level, Doctor, let us talk about a subject that has just begun to surface publicly, almost ferociously, called leaky gut. What is leaky gut, and what are the symptoms and conditions that cause it? And how is this related to the big picture? People say it's connected with obesity, diabetes, lupus, and various autoimmune diseases. Is this true? Could you describe leaky gut and ferret out the truth about its reality and its possibility of being an underlying cause of many different diseases?
Well, sure. First, let me tell you about the concept of leaky gut, then I will connect it to the big picture, as you say.
Great.
Leaky gut, the lining of the intestines becoming toxic, oxidized, inflamed, and having less than optimal mitochondrial function. The mitochondria being the cell, the part of the cell where you process energy. Toil, toxicity, oxidation, inflammation, less than optimal mitochondrial function, is acting on all tissues of the body, all cells of the body. The toxins in the environment, lack of antioxidants, the immune system kicking in with inflammation, and the power cells, the power batteries of the cell not functioning well, will disrupt tissues or how cells work to the point that they shrivel up, if you will. Cells that line the intestines, they shrivel up, they become leaky. And when that is happening, and I believe it's quite common, the way we eat and process our food, and et cetera, when you've got leaky gut, toxins from the gut can escape the gut and go everywhere, thereby compounding the toxicity, oxidation, inflammation, and less than optimal mitochondrial function throughout the body, in every cell of the body. Also, the gut itself, the bacteria that lives in the gut, we call it the microbiome, begins to produce inflammation. You see, the gut flora, the microbes you have in your gut, are 2/3 of the immune system, a fact that won the Nobel Prize in 1908. And now, as you well said it, is on the cover issue of the most august journals. Unfortunately, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I began practice, this was quackery. Everyone who maintained that there is such a thing as leaky gut was marginalized. In fact, I still find doctors, colleagues, so misinformed that they tell patients there's nothing of the kind. There is no leaky gut. I tell you, they're not reading their own journals. I think I showed you in my office a covered issue of the journal Gastroenterology last year, the May issue, 2014, Gastroenterology. Picture on the very cover, leaky gut. So that's what leaky gut is. Now let me take it to the next picture. Oh, by the way, you're absolutely right. When you got that going, you can expect all diseases to begin to manifest themselves. Diseases start with faulty processing of energy and information, food, in the gut. Is that basic? And so then you will not be fueling or constructing other cells properly for them to function properly. And so now the big picture. The ancients understood that everything in nature is creation, destruction. Creation, destruction. Spring, summer, fall, winter, etc. So they saw the sun as coming and going, as being created and destroyed. Isis and Osiris, Set fighting in Egypt, the gods, Set finally killing Osiris and chopping him up in pieces, and then resurrecting, of course, same with Dionysius and Pythagoras. So the same old myths or legends were adopted by Christianity as to where how much you build on that is totally up to each religion. But the point is that the cycles of nature were revered as creation destruction. The very origin of all this is Agni and Mithra in Hinduism. The dance of Shiva represents the cycles of creation destruction. The Sumerians called it the Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is a snake eating its own tail. In the circle, there's a dove. It turns out the circle formed by the snake eating its own tail, there's a dove depicted, or a bird. So the symbol of the snake and the dove are symbols of energy and information. The snake being energy and the dove information. So you see where I'm going with this.
Well, you know, I'm thinking that that in terms of this particular condition that we've been just briefly mentioning, leaky gut, I mean, would you say it's reached epidemic proportions?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, let me finish the analogy. It turns out that every day we lose 10 billion cells to make 10 billion new cells from the food we eat. So if you're not eating properly, you're not patching up the leaky gut. It turns out that we also have leaky arteries, leaky brain, leaky everything. That's just nature, creation, destruction. Every day we die, if you will, a little death, 10 billion cells, to make 10 billion new cells, creation, destruction, creation, destruction. So if we're not fueling up properly with the right foods, then the destruction side of the equation begins to assert itself, and you lose balance. But if you're creating sufficiently well, feeding yourself sufficiently well, then you're in balance. The forces of creation, destruction are in balance. So moderns call this metabolism catabolism. And that is yet another inspirational point, if you will, for patients, people to understand how sacred it is to eat the right food.
Doctor, if I may interrupt there, we know that your approach is very diet-oriented, but there are lots of stories out there and lots of different kinds of diets, and even contradictory ideas of what is good for you and what is not. And one popular diet out there is the paleo diet, and I know you have written about it in your blog. What do you think about it? And in general, what do you think about diets as a way to prevent leaky gut? And specifically, I mean, I ask about the paleo diet because it's the one that I'm following. But could you care to expand on this topic?
Sure. You know, the problem, the basic problem you are alluding alluding to is misinformation, and I'm afraid that a whole lot of it is planted there by the industrial technology complex, if you will. And so, with all the confusion, people are left to eat whatever. They give up. But it turns out that diet and nutrition are quite simple. And once you get the basics of it, all the confusion just dissipates. So, specifically, we need to eat foods that harness the most energy and information from the sun, and that is plants. So there's no question whatsoever that the best diets are plant-based. Plant-based. Now, we can eat animal protein. Hopefully the animal has been grown in a healthy way without antibiotics and steroids and hormones, etc. And so, which diet is the best? It turns out that the best diet, there's no question, is an omnivore diet, meaning most of us are genetically accustomed to eating a little bit of animal protein, lots of plants, and grains, okay? But the grains need to be whole grain. Now, the thing with the paleo diet, there's a lot of misinformation about it. It is absolutely true that a segment of the population genetically must eat the paleo diet, which, as you know, is no grains, no legumes, and a lot of animal protein. But you see, specifically, and I can tell you how each diet, even the vegetarian diet, can be flawed. But let's speak of the paleo diet first. You read the blog, so you know what I'm going to say. Basically, the paleo man ate a lot of nuts, a lot of tubers, a lot of fruits, because he wasn't successful every time he went out hunting for that big mammoth. He might come back with a rabbit or two. Great. Paleo man didn't live that long. Now, having said all that, I'm not saying that a paleo diet is a bad diet. No. I'm just saying it's a bit misunderstood, and that if it helps someone real well, and I'm a big advocate of testing to see if processed wheat, might be a problem. Yes.
You know something, Doctor? We're going to have to take a break now, and we'll get back to this really important subject of nutrition and these different diets, and actually your solutions as well as the ones that are out there in the world today. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Threshold with Dr. Hugo Rodier.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them." Again, we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's Westside Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed. Perhaps 2 of the greatest problems affecting people's health in the United States are diabetes and obesity. How do you explain the superabundance of these conditions, and what can we do about it?
Only could you repeat?
Yeah, I was talking about 2 of the greatest problems affecting people's health in the United States: diabetes and obesity, which you call diabesity, I believe.
Yes.
How do you explain why these are so widespread, and what can we do about it?
Oh, okay. Well, I wrote another book about that, Licking Sweet Death. It's out of print, but I've rewritten it, Switching Off Chronic Illnesses. But yes, absolutely. I think it's a political, economic problem and must be viewed from a public health lens, or we're not going to lick this thing. It turns out the most basic problem is that people are addicted to sugar. This has been written up in the best of journals, including the journal Nature. The manipulation of food and information by the food industry and colluding with the government has been on the cover issue of the British Medical Journal and other articles in many other books or magazines and journals. And so it just doesn't do any good to tell kids, even adults, eat your broccoli. Why would they do that? Their taste buds are totally addicted to sugar. Their gut flora, the microbiome, is addicted to sugar. And so you have a violent reaction when you stop eating sugar. I see that all the time. People go through withdrawals, cold turkey. And so the addiction to sugar has been associated or compared to an addiction to tobacco and alcohol and heroin. And so we're talking about a major public health issue. You know, it's like telling an alcoholic, hey, why don't you drink water instead? Really? And you're totally wasting your time. And so to go around, in fact, I can show you articles where all the campaigns for healthy school lunches are failing. because to walk in there for a week and tell people eat your broccoli, kids eat your broccoli, and then quit and go to some other school, it just doesn't work. So it's a terrible problem, and so I try to work on it from a psychological, spiritual side. When people come in and they're having trouble with their diets, I begin to discuss with them their lives, their stresses. Those are the factors that lead to addiction. Addictions, after all, is a futile attempt to calm down spiritual, emotional issues with chemicals. So bad foods are the same.
You know, you share a case in switching off chronic disease about a woman who reversed her diabetes. Many people think that a diabetes diagnosis means a permanent prescription for insulin forever. Can you briefly, we've only got a couple of minutes left, a minute and a half. Could you just say something about that possibility of resolving these problems of diabetes without insulin?
Well, it's a mixed question. So let me tackle this from the good part first. Okay. Diabetes, non-insulin dependent, is totally reversible, and you can pick it up early. We call it pre-diabetes. Check an A1C level in the blood. It needs to be under 5.7. And so just about everyone, if they eat real well, exercise, take a handful of supplements, diabetes number 2, non-insulin dependent, is certifiable, documented to be reversible.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We will come back at the right after the station break here at 10 o'clock, and we'll be talking more about these incredibly significant health problems we have and your unique way of treating them.